Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 28-year personal injury lawyer, and this is the podcast where we talk about everything personal injury law related. And today we continue discussing summertime issues. Right now there's a lot more traffic on the roadways. And as a matter of fact, July is one of the most deadliest months on Missouri roads, with families heading out on road trips, teens out of school. Accidents are on the rise. And today we're diving into what causes these crashes and how Missouri law protects victims. So, up today, we're going to be looking at the increased crash rates that occur in July. And did you know the 4th of July is often the most dangerous driving day of the year? And most likely, the cause of that is drinking and driving. Obviously, the 4th of July is a celebratory day. And unfortunately, people make the decision to get behind the wheel after they've been celebrating, and accidents happen. Common factors that we see in all of these crashes are driver fatigue, distractions. Again, you've got a lot more teenagers that are on the roadway, they're on summer break, and again, higher DUI and late night driving incidents. It's also interesting to note that rural roadways and highways like I-70 and I-44 see spikes in accidents as well during this time. And again, holiday weekends cause traffic surges and accidents also. So, taking a little bit of a deeper dive on what causes summer accidents, specifically with distracted driving. Once again, cell phones are a big culprit, and paying attention to navigation or messing with your console, something like that. And would you believe, even eating snacks in your car, having a drink, something happens with that, causes your attention to turn away from the road. And again, as I've talked about before, it only takes that half a second to a second of not having your eye on the roadway to prevent you as the driver seeing a potential hazard, potential problem, or not staying in your lane, whatever that looks like. That's all it takes. And the next thing you know, an accident occurs. Now, again, during the summer, we've got a lot of different types of activities where alcohol is involved, whether that's barbecues, lake trips, festivals, whatever it is. Alcohol is there, which again then leads people to get behind the wheel when they've simply had more to drink than they should be to operate a vehicle safely. Teen drivers, coming with teen drivers is inexperience, peer pressure, overconfidence, and of course, distraction. And distraction for teen drivers takes on many forms. Again, phones are huge, messing with the radio. If they've got passengers in their car and they're interacting with them and they're not paying attention to the road, teen drivers are very easily distracted in a critical time when they're behind the wheel of a vehicle. And then, other things that contribute to the rise in accidents in the summer are heat related tire blowouts, possible maintenance issues with a car, and the heat causes the car to malfunction in some way. And this also leads to the increase in accidents during the summer. Now, you've got to remember Missouri is a at fault state. That means you can seek damages from the driver who caused the accident. And it's the same in Kansas. If someone negligently causes an accident, you can make a claim against them for the injuries and the damages that follow. So, what does that look like? Well, if you're hurt and you get medical care, there's medical bills that can be part of the claim. If you miss work because of your injuries, that can be part of the claim. There obviously can be the car repair or the car replacement that goes along with it. And then finally, the big one that's always hard to put a number on, but can be the most critical is the harms and the losses that come with this whole experience, with the injury, with everything you go through. Typically referred to as pain and suffering, this is one of the crucial areas or elements of getting compensated because, again, an accident that leads to serious injury or worse is a major, potentially life altering event. And so all of these elements make up a personal injury claim in Missouri or Kansas coming out of a car accident. Now, we also have to remember that if an accident involves a drunk driver, another element of damages might be in play, and that's punitive damages. And punitive damages are those damages that are meant to essentially punish the wrongdoer because their actions rose to the level of a reckless disregard, or basically a willful action. And so we're trying to get damages, punitive damages, to punish them and also to deter others from engaging in that type of activity. And again, the biggest one would be a drunk driving scenario. But, if someone is speeding down a roadway at, say, 100 miles per hour, that can potentially justify going after them for punitive damages because, again, that action on a, say, 55 mile per hour speed limit road or even a 65 mile per hour speed limit road, if you're going 100 miles per hour or greater than that, you are acting with reckless, conscious indifference to the safety of others. And so, again, that's another level of potential damages that can come into play in those types of situations. Now, we also have to remember this with teen driver accidents, there's always a possibility of liability involving the parents or the guardians of that teenager. If you have a teenager that maybe has had multiple problems driving, whether that's, speeding tickets, other types of uh, infractions, traffic infractions, maybe has had a history of accidents, and the parents have continued to allow that teenager to operate their vehicle, then potentially there's a negligent entrustment claim to be made against the parents. And so that's something that, we always look at depending on the facts of the situation. Is there anybody else that's potentially responsible out of what might otherwise just seem like a straightforward car accident? That's where a seasoned personal injury lawyer comes in to make sure that we're pursuing all avenues of recovery for the person who was innocent in all of this and has sustained injury and damages. Now, for some of the most recent data, we have in 2022, 31,599 personal injury crashes occurring, and 3,919 crashes were attributed to distracted driving. And again, what I always say is that these numbers are likely underreported because you can't always prove that somebody was distracted. If they don't acknowledge it, if they don't admit to it, you know, we don't know, right? Now, sometimes, again, we've had plenty of cases where the at fault driver says, I dropped my phone. I was trying to get it. I was messing with the radio. I was doing something else. I was trying to get into my purse, whatever it looks like. And obviously, when those go on a police report, those types of statements, those are what makes it into this data. But again, there's plenty of situations where the at fault driver is not going to admit to having been distracted. And I mentioned speeding here just a minute ago and aggressive driving. 36% of all traffic fatalities involve speed. There's no question that excessive speed leads to accidents. And more importantly, or of interest, is that speed differentials on roadways also are a big factor in causing accidents. Because if you have somebody that's going 85 miles an hour, I mean, they are speeding, but then you have somebody on the roadway going 55, say that's the speed limit, that differential creates problems for drivers on the roadway because we all drive with a feel for what the speed limit is. And when somebody is greatly exceeding the speed limit, it throws off the judgment of the drivers around them. But it should be important to note that speed contributes to over half of fatal crashes, which is twice more than impairment alone. So you've heard the phrase speed kills, and it's true. It really does. Now, in the distracted driving data, at least 106 people died in Missouri in 2023 from distracted driving. And again, I'll put an asterisk there because that is what was actually reported as a distracted driving accident. In 2023, substance impaired drivers were involved in 183 fatalities. And young and elderly drivers, about 20% of personal injury crashes involved young drivers and drivers over 55, which hurts me because I don't feel like I'm elderly and I'm not quite at 55, but I'm close. Drivers over 55 also contributed disproportionately to accidents and fatal accidents. And finally, commercial vehicles. So big trucks, UPS, Amazon, whatever you want to think of as a commercial vehicle, they were involved in around 8% of injury crashes, and work zone incidents comprised about 2.5% of these statistics. So, what should you do if for some reason you find yourself involved in an accident and maybe you're on summer vacation or otherwise you're driving around in the summer? Well, again, if we just break it down, number one, you have to start by making sure you get authorities to the scene of the accident. If you think or believe you're hurt at all, that's critical because you need to nail down witnesses. You need the at fault driver talking to the police because they don't have time to come up with a story when they're on the scene being questioned by the police. So again, I always encourage get the police to the scene. Now, again, if you're hurt and you're seriously hurt and you're taken away by ambulance, you need to do everything or have people on your behalf do everything they can to nail down evidence, witnesses, things like that as quickly as possible because evidence can disappear, statements can change, versions can change. So narrowing that down as quickly as possible is crucial. Again, photographs are always huge. If, again, you're around and can take photographs of the scene, the vehicles, things like that, very critical. If not, getting pictures of vehicles afterwards, very important. And again, the next biggie, which again, if you're really hurt, you're going to probably get medical care immediately. If something comes on shortly after all of this, a lot of times adrenaline is high. You're almost in shock. You're not feeling anything, but within a few hours, all of a sudden pain is starting to come on. You need to get medical care. It's important. It's important for your health, and it's important to document what's going on with you after this accident. I always caution people, don't post anything on social media. There's no reason to do that because anything that you put out to the world is usually easily findable, and you don't know what you say, what part of that can hurt you, or however it might affect the situation. So you're best just not putting anything out to the world. And of course, you should always reach out. If you've been seriously hurt, you should not try to mess with insurance companies on your own. I cannot say it enough. The insurance companies, they have a couple different games that they will play, which is either make it really hard on you or make it seem too easy for you. So they're either going to deny or they're going to try to lure you into a quick settlement, something that we're seeing more often now with certain insurance companies. A quick offer, it might be a few days after an accident. They're throwing money out. Again, it's not big money, but it's almost enough to seem like, well, why wouldn't I? Well, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So, why do you hire a seasoned personal injury lawyer? Well, first off, several of the things I've already talked about, getting a lawyer involved that knows these types of cases, they get started, they work on making sure evidence isn't lost, making sure witness statements are nailed down, getting involved with the insurance company on the front side, making sure they're not playing games, things like that. Generally speaking, the statistics show people with lawyers get more money for their claims than they do on their own. And there's a reason for that. Insurance companies, they know the game. And sadly, for them, it is a game, right? It's a business for them. They are a for-profit operation. They are there to make money, and the way they're going to do that is pay as little as they have to. So you get a lawyer involved on your side, a lawyer that's done this a lot, knows what to look for, knows all these little tricks and maneuvers that have to be made. And that way you don't get shorted on the compensation you deserve. Again, lawyers like myself, we understand local courts, we understand insurance practices, and we know personal injury law. And we make sure people that are hurt get appropriately taken care of and get all the compensation that they should. And, the other thing about it is you generally want to have a lawyer. Let's say you're hurt on vacation. You're going to generally want a lawyer in the area where the accident happened. Number one, the lawyer that is involved, it needs to be licensed in the state where it happened. But number two, they're going to be the ones that are most familiar with the area, most familiar with where the accident happened. And again, they're going to be on the ground as needed. If, for example, a lawsuit has to be filed, it's going to have to be filed there. And so that's just a really important thing to keep in mind. You go back to your home state and you think you can hire a lawyer there, but that's not going to be sufficient. So here's the key takeaways, right? July is beautiful. It's hot, but it's summer. And for me personally, it's better than freezing in the winter, but it's also a very risky time on the roadways. And so if you or a loved one is hurt in some kind of a car accident in Missouri or Kansas, don't wait to get help. I can't stress that enough. So if you're injured in a summer crash, if you're on vacation, whatever that looks like, give us a call. We will be there every step of the way to help you get the compensation you deserve while you focus on your medical situation and getting better. And just as a final wrap up, here's a few important things to keep in mind. There's going to be, during the summer, there's going to be stricter enforcement of seatbelts and distracted driving laws. And in Missouri, that means investigators often highlight phone usage, speeding, impairment. These are all important elements or evidence in a personal injury case. Again, higher speeds make crashes more severe. Even small increases, for example, 5 miles per hour above the posted speed limit, that can elevate the fatal crash risk by around 24%. Teens and long trips. Summer vacations often involve youthful drivers and fatigue. And again, as I've already discussed, both of those are key contributors to crashes. So keep that in mind. Rural highways are riskier. Higher speeds, less traffic enforcement, and unfamiliar terrain increase crash severity and complexity for liability claims. And finally, commercial involvement or work zones complicate claims. Trucking negligence and improper signage maintenance often form legal grounds. And keep this in mind, we see a lot of work zone cases, accidents come about during the summer. That's when a lot of that is going on. And interestingly enough, we see a lot of situations where big trucks are trying to merge in and the other driver is in their lane. And for whatever reason, the big truck doesn't see them. They merge over, they end up colliding, running over, dragging a vehicle. I've seen it all. So just keep all of that in mind and listen, continue to enjoy your summer. And until the next episode, be safe and be well.